Welcome, everybody, to Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle, the author of Writing That Gets Noticed, Find Your Voice, Become a Better Storyteller, Get Published, and it is now a course at NYU and an elective towards the journalism certificate. Every week, I speak with novelists, with authors, with writers of every niche to talk about their tips, their tricks, their strategies, and how the sauce is made, including creative advice. I'll talk about essays and articles and share my own experience from 3 decades of publishing. So join me every week and grow your business and build your craft with Freelance Writing Direct. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, and follow along on Substack, where I share special clips for subscribers only at estelleserasmus.substack.com. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, and I am so happy to have Aly Walansky with us today. And let me just tell you a little bit about Aly. She has been covering lifestyle topics with a focus on food, travel, and cocktails for 2 decades. She's done all of this living and working and eating from a tiny New York City studio apartment. So she knows a thing or two about cooking and eating while on a budget, in small spaces, and sharing it with her audience. Her daily Substack newsletter goes out to close to 10,000 people each day. Wow. And I want to also add that Aly was listed in Muckrak's list of the top 10 favorite journalists in 2024. So congratulations about that, Aly.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
This is wonderful because I really like to expose my audience to all the aspects of freelance writing and writing. It's not just authoring books, it's writing in different niches and for different genres and pivoting in your career and building other aspects like a Substack newsletter. So I'm so excited to have you here. And we've known each other, I believe, through social media and through different Facebook groups and some very private Facebook groups for years. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to me, you also started in the beauty world, which I started at Woman's World magazine in the beauty department as an associate beauty editor. You're so prolific, first of all. I mean, I just want to go back and say, with your areas of expertise, just a short list, and I just did my deep dive into Aly. She writes for Forbes, for Travel and Leisure, for Martha Stewart, for Today.com, for Food Network, for Clean Plates. And she recently even did an AMA, Ask Me Anything, for gift guides with a co-host. So we're going to dive into all of that. But you started out in beauty and then you pivoted. Can you talk a little bit about that, Aly?
Sure. So when I started being a freelancer, is for sheknows.com, and I had a blog before blogs were even necessarily a thing. I didn't know what they were. And it was focused mainly on beauty and style and hair, which obviously are things I care about. And I started to cover a lot of beauty, though, from a spa perspective, which kind of brought me to the travel edge because you travel to spas. And so when I would be traveling to write about spas, I would end up eating. And I was like, wait a second, food and cocktails, that's where it's at. So while I never fully abandoned beauty, and I'm working on a beauty story right now, actually, I'm mostly focused now on, eating, drinking, traveling, the whole lifestyles umbrella, I like to tell people.
I love it. The fun stuff.
The fun stuff. I mean, I was a journalism major in college, but I was never really interested in writing about the depressing things like, politics or, war and sickness, because I mean that stuff is hurtful to read. Why would I want to write it? So I've always wanted to write what I enjoy reading about.
One of my favorite parts of being a magazine editor was all the invitations I got to lunches, to launches to openings, and it was always at great restaurants or great tea places or clubs with fabulous food. And
Mhm.
so you must get so many invitations.
Yes.
How do you discern what is going to work for you? And do you have some non-negotiables? Because you're invited to everything, I imagine.
Yeah, so I say no to about 80% of invitations. Part of my structure as a freelance writer is that I try to stay at my desk during working hours all day, every day. So for that reason, I don't do breakfasts or lunches ever. And I think that's helped me a lot because people know if they need a really quick turnaround story on there being a new flavor of Oreo cookie, I am at my desk. I am not sitting at Le Bernardine having some pounded tuna. I'd love to be. Obviously, it's a lot more fun to be having like, a seafood and champagne lunch, but treating freelancing as a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 job is what keeps me going. So I limit events to happy hour or dinner. So basically 5 p.m. and later.
Okay. And you are so prolific. I mean, all these relationships that you've built. First of all, we have to talk about how you are able to be so prolific. I get that you have your set hours that you're working, but I mean, this is an enormous amount of output. And also doing your Substack every day and having 10,000 subscribers. How do you manage that? You must be an
Well,
expert with time management.
I mean, it helps that I have really bad insomnia, so that works in my favor also. But honestly, the Substack has actually helped me to manage time because if I need various types of experts, be it a sleep expert or a skincare expert or a chef, I could just write in my Substack what I'm looking for and they come to me. So I don't have to be like sending out a bunch of feelers and emails and searching people down like maybe I had to do 5 years ago.
You found a great use for your Substack to source for you, kind
Mhm.
of like what HARO, Help a Reporter Out, used to do, which is
Right.
now sold to some other output. In my book, I cover a lot of different resources like Quoted, which is
Mhm.
another place. And of course, you could do a hashtag on Twitter, journal request. But by nature, the pieces that you do a lot of gift guides, you do a lot of pieces that require that expert information. And so you're always, I mean, constantly looking for sources and new sources. And so I could see how with your Substack and people responding to it, it's like you're your own little engine for that.
Yeah, it's really great for that because I do a lot of stories where I'm rounding up cocktails or dishes at various like bars and restaurants. And like most of my subscribers are actually publicists. So they could see what I'm working on, they could forward it to their clients. And it's a way of helping out all these small businesses and small restaurants that wouldn't necessarily be on something like Quoted or Cision, that they just have to, log on to an email or visit a website and it's all there for them.
That's so interesting. So the smaller, the mom and pop, the people that are just starting, they can go to your Substack, see what you're looking for, and it's helping their clients because you're somebody who's in all these top publications. And you're also building relationships on both sides of the
Absolutely.
equation.
Yeah, it's been amazing because I've always tried to make it more than transactional. I don't want it just to be about, a publicist pitching me and me telling them what I'm working on. And I feel like it's a sort of community. Like during the pandemic, when we were all stuck in our homes, I used to do a lot of cooking on my Instagram stories so that we would, even though we were home alone, be able to eat together. And I feel like my Substack is sort of a work extension of that.
I always wondered about that because the early days of the pandemic, I think I was just stuck. Like, I didn't even know what to do. My daughter was doing the homeschool stuff from her school, and she was younger in middle school. And I was just like watching the Met and stuff. But people were writing books, people were building programs on Instagram Live. And my work came after. Like, it was the
Yeah.
stuff that I had been doing that I didn't even realize that I could then make into stories or things like that. But I wasn't really doing anything to build my audience or anything other than posting occasionally on Facebook. And actually, one of the posts did become a story because I sang to my dad who had Alzheimer's, and
Oh,
that
wow.
ended up becoming a story in the New York Times.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, the pandemic was, I feel like we were something we're all in together, but it affected us all in very unique ways, depending on our circumstances and where we were. I was working the whole time, but definitely that was another example of pivoting because, like, obviously I write about going to restaurants and bars and they were all closed. So all of a sudden I was like, well, how can you write about food if you're not dining out? So it was about shopping your kitchen, stretching your ingredients, meal prep, all these people who were stuck at home that normally weren't people at home cooking, they needed those resources. So I was trying to, be that for them, but also it made me feel like less alone because I was isolating alone. I don't have a husband or a kid. It was just like me alone in my apartment. So I made the world my family.
I love that I made the world my family. Did the PR people also contribute when you were shopping your pantry or working for ingredients or making cocktails at home? Was that still something you were able to get support from for your
Well, right, yeah, because I would write stories and I would need chef input, and those chefs, a lot of them were stuck home also and kind of needed something like a vehicle themselves.
yeah.
And they were a lot more accessible. Like if you DM a celebrity chef while he's stuck at home and not in his restaurant, all of a sudden he was very eager to chat with you. So I feel like everyone needed a friend, and we were all kind of in the same boat.
What I also love about your career is that you have real relationships with publications. You're a go-to for, it's not like you have a one shot with Forbes or a one shot with Travel and Leisure. They rely on you over and over. What is the secret to building that kind of a sustainable relationship for somebody who writes about your subject areas?
It's basically time. I like to call it an anchor client, and that's basically anyone that I use on a regular basis, either long term or a certain amount of times a week or a month. And for outlets like Food Network or like The Kitchen, I've been writing for them a couple of times a week for years at this point. And it's not that I have a guarantee of a certain amount of time, but it's what ends up happening. And like the way our relationship goes, they know the kind of things that I am good at. I also know the kind of pitches that they want to receive. So it's like building any sort of relationship. You learn someone's quirks and what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And you can't make everyone your anchor client. I couldn't, but some do work out.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask you about your AMA. Is this a regular series that you plan to do? How does that go?
Well, so I do them occasionally when there is interest, when it's basically subjects that I feel like my subscribers kind of need a little guidance on. And it's basically, you hop on Zoom, the subscribers are there. My friend Alice, who also has a Substack, is my co-host. And we just answer questions people might have about pitching or follow-ups or even like nitty-gritty things like how to submit photos that are the way we want to receive them, subject lines for your pitch emails that get attention. So it's almost like a quick workshop. And it's completely free if you subscribe to our Substacks.
So the key is to subscribe to the Substack, paid or just regular?
Paid. The free Substack that goes there's a free one that goes out every single day with my sourcing. I would never charge for access to my stories ever. I don't think that's ethical. This is a free one that goes out every day. That's what I'm working on, what's recently published. And in that one, I give a lot of like, I think, added value to of what you like events I recently went to, dinners I went to, my takeaway as far as industry commentary or insights. Then there's a supplemental once a week edition that's a paid edition that is more of like a more in-depth industry related topic. And that's where like the consulting type of things come from.
And how do you decide what to put in the one for the paid, the more specific one?
I think it's usually something that I feel like is like something that's really a buzz topic right now in the industry or something that people need a lot of guidance on. But I try to make the free one also have a lot of value because like I don't want people just to think it's a give and take. Like I want to be able to help people. So that's something a little extra. But the Q&As and the AMAs are a feature of the paid one. I'm like, you know what? Let's just, you have a question, come to me and we'll talk it out.
And do you have different co-hosts with you? Or do
Oh
you
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I have, I've worked with Alice, my friend Jill, who also has a Substack. I mean, it basically depends on what we're working on. Alice and Jill and I went on a press trip about a month ago. And since it was travel related, we came up with like a couple of like topics related to press trips and planning a press trip that we kind of want to work on together as far as an AMA.
and how many people usually come to your AMA?
Well, we're limited by Zoom only letting us have 100 members come. Otherwise, we would let everyone who wanted to come if we could, but 100 people because of Zoom limits.
Do you tape it and send it to the people who attend?
Yeah, we record it, and then like anyone who wants to could just stream it. And a subscriber, of course. Yeah.
And how do you make it not devolve into like weird questions, you
I
know?
mean, honestly, everyone's been lovely. I mean, yeah, obviously sometimes it does devolve into just like chatting about whatever.
Absolutely. I want to pivot again to talk about something that is really blowing up the industry and has far-reaching consequences, and that's AI.
Yes. I
And
am not a fan.
okay, do you feel it's going to cut into the areas that you work in, or have you seen any indication of it being used in a way that's going to take away livelihood of journalists and writers?
Well, the point that I'm at right now, all the outlets I work with, they've made it very clear they don't want to catch anyone using AI in their content. And if they catch you, then you're kaput, which is the way I think it should be because AI should not be replacing actual journalists, just like AI shouldn't be replacing actual photographers and anyone else. I think it is possible there are publications that, a lot of the writing out there right now, what people are looking for is super formulaic, like it's SEO based, it's listicles. And I think if AI is going to take over anything, it would be that.
Yeah.
So I think as a freelancer, the best thing you could do is do things that require you having a unique personal voice. And that's the one thing AI can't take from you.
Exactly. Like I advocate in my book, do not do listicles. I mean, maybe if you have to start in the beginning and get a clip, yes, but that is not going to get you noticed. You have to put your voice somewhere in the piece and become a part of the story. That's the only way that you're going to start building
Right.
your. Now,
If
do you do that? Do you put yourself in the story?
I do when I'm allowed to, but I also, if I'm going to be get assigned like a roundup of like, great shoes that are on sale on Amazon, because a lot of stuff is commerce based now. I try to put an aspect in of, you know, I wore these shoes on a trip to Las Vegas and I walked, 8 miles in them and I had no blisters. Like, I want it to be an element of I am a human being and I use this. I didn't just generate from Amazon everything that had a 5-star rating for the purposes of your affiliate link.
Yes, yes, that's great. I mean, that you really have your head wrapped around how you need to navigate through your career. And
Yeah.
speaking of that, I mean, you built 10,000 subscriber followers, which for Substack, which is just how did you do that? Did you move a mailing list over that?
No, no. I mean,
No.
it's taken about 3 years. It's a little bit below 10,000, but it's very close to it. And it's just people have been asking me for years, do you have a distribution list for your pitches, what you're looking for? And I was always like, no, I don't, but cute idea. And then when Substack came to be, and I realized how easy it was that I could just put a link in my email address or post on something like Czars and say, I have a Substack, and people could just join it and then they have what they want. That's what they've been asking for forever. Then like that's why most of my subscribers are publicists because they're looking for it there. They want to see what I'm working on. If a story went live that I was working on, like what are my pitching requirements for this particular story? So that's who a lot of them are. But I also have freelance writers who subscribe and small business owners. So I think it's anyone that's interested in the intersection of PR and media have been interested. And it's totally become like my modern day blog in a way.
That's so awesome. And so when you pivoted, right, did you keep doing beauty and then add different elements of lifestyle to it? Like how, if somebody wants to pivot, like I always say, let's say somebody's doing beauty and they want to do travel. I said, then if you're doing beauty, add a travel element to the
Right.
piece. So maybe you're writing about the best spas in Europe, right? So the
Yes.
beauty, and then it's the travel, or what you need to pack in your suitcase for a weekend spa getaway. I keep thinking spa. Or if you're doing something with hair, maybe it's the hairstyles of the stars in so and so, some other country, and what their stylists say, something like that.
Yeah, I think if you're a freelancer, it's in your best interest to have as many feelers out there as you possibly could. So, like, yeah, I might focus on food and travel now, but like, I still write beauty. If someone assigns me a story on the best towels for your guest's bathroom, I'm going to do that also because, the climate is tough out there and there are less publications than there were a couple of years ago. The
Yes.
more things that you can do, the more work you'll get.
I agree. And to that token, like what are some actionable steps that writers can do to make sure they're as marketable as possible? Because you're an expert at that, Allie.
I think having a social media footprint is so important. Like, I know that sometimes it's not the most appealing thing for a person that they have to, like, share their life on social media, but it helps you be seen. It helps to make you a person. And you never know when an editor who might be for your dream publication sees your Instagram and sees what you've been doing or the stories you've been sharing. And you're like, I would love to work with that person. So I think putting yourself out there, it's more than about going to events, although that does matter. It's, it's networking on a social media level, doing all of that so people could find you, people know you, people look for you.
Do you still do those Instagrams, and are you on TikTok?
No, I'm very bad at TikTok. I think it's because I'm old, but I tried to. So for Passover, I did a bunch of like TikTok videos of like, this is how I make homemade horseradish or whatever. And honestly, I'm not a great TikToker, so they did not get a ton of views. But it's fun, but yeah, I use Instagram a lot. I still make my dinner on Instagram sometimes, but I also share like, pictures of my puppies and like, if I got a cute blowout. So I just make it another avenue into my life and I share my Instagram links in my Substack sometimes just to like add to a sense of, hey, it's not just all work here. We're here to have fun too.
That's cool. What I've been doing now is taking video clips from my YouTube of episodes and putting them on my TikTok. So I'm not doing it like live on the TikTok, but it's still me. You're still getting me on the page. So we'll see how that's doing.
Yeah, I think it's different to be a writer now versus like 20 years ago that you kind of have to put yourself all out there. Like it used to be writing could be an anonymous thing. I remember I wanted to be like a romance novelist and hang out in my little writing nook with a cup of coffee and like now all of a sudden you have to be in the middle of the world if you want to do anything.
It's true, and a lot of writers are introverts. They're like, "I don't wanna put my face out there. I don't wanna do that." And I guess there are ways you can do it with, a background or B-roll or something like that. I haven't figured that out yet. I'm still, but I do kind of like I do it when I feel like it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
when my
I'm a
hair.
total introvert. Honestly, I'm so, so shy. Like, it's easy to be outgoing when you're hiding behind a computer, but, like, to this day, and I probably over the last 20 years gone to hundreds of media events. There's still a lot of times I walk in and my inclination is to stand at the back of the room and look at my phone. Like, that never goes away.
They can be intimidating. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a whole, it's always been like that. I mean, I write in my book that I used to go to these events and it was then the Seven Sisters, all the magazines, and they'd come in and their little Robert Palmer black miniskirt with jacket outfits and take over. And I was kind of shirking to the side, but I'm still here.
Right, you're still here, that the world changes, absolutely. There was a point historically that I'd go to a beauty event and I'd know everyone in the room. And now that I do less beauty, and I'm also a little bit older than I was, I still go to the rare beauty event and I'll know maybe 3 or 4 people in the room. But I know a lot of people at food and cocktail events because that's more my thing now.
But they know who you are. I think it's
I
more
mean,
important that they know who you are than you know who they are.
that is that truly is a hustle. Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened with you. So, Aly, this has been absolutely wonderful. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to cover?
I can't think of anything other than like, you're starting out in freelance writing. I think it's a really good idea to reach out, find like a writer who you admire on Instagram, on Twitter, and just like say hello. Like, ask if you could follow their Substack or meet them for a coffee. Most of us are really eager to get to know you and help you. We're here for you.
Somebody had reached out to me and complimented the podcast and said they were dealing with something, and I was helping them by my actionable tips that I shared, that my guests share. And I said, well, maybe you can come on and I'll do a live, a taped coaching, and
That's
we'll
brilliant.
cover some of your issues. And so I think that worked really well, and I'm going to do more of it. And so you're right, reach out to people that you want to form some sort of relationship with. Not in the way that somebody emailed me the other day, by the way. Here's my op-ed. I'd like you to look at it, and I'd like to make coin.
Yeah, absolutely not. If you have a friend that's a chef and you run into him in a party, you're not going to ask them to make you a souffle. Like,
Thank you. Yes. And I feel that is not even acknowledging boundaries. So I'm not even going to respond to that because it's just
no,
like
that's
a
just obnoxious.
DM. No. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. But yeah, and I think also by connecting with more experienced writers, people can reach out to us who have a million like contacts and maybe we'll know if something that's available to them. So I think networking is key. And if I hadn't networked back in the day, I don't know if I'd be where I am right now. So I always want to help people if I can because I know people help me.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I love, like, my students know that I'm generous with advice, and people in the writing community appreciate the podcast. And I'm happy to give back in that way because
Yeah,
I think it's tough with the changes and the sea change that's happened in publishing. But there is always a way. I
there's
started
always a
30
way.
years ago. I'm kind of the Zelig of publishing. I've gone through every stage and still ticking.
And we both still look great. So there's that too.
And we're in pink.
And we're in pink with 2 blondes in pink. And we didn't even plan this, which is amazing.
Two blondes in pink. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Aly.
Thank you so much for having me. I had the best time.
Follow me at EstelleSErasmus.com on my website and on social media, which is Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Estelle S. Erasmus. And we're now on YouTube for Freelance Writing Direct. Follow along, and soon everyone will be reading what you're writing.